Before we start the Q&A, I wanted to add a few extra things to my info dump video. If you haven't watched it, you should check it out now. First, someone pointed out in the comments that the space rig appears to be emitting tons of smoke in the teaser, almost like it was damaged by something. Pretty good theory. No idea how I missed that. Second, someone speculated that the two cards aren't there just for aesthetics, that each card could lead you to a different stage. This would align with roguelikes in general. Most notably, in Cult of the Lamb, between each room you're able to pick which way to continue. And lastly, in terms of time dilation, I've been told by at minimum 5 comments now that it'll slow down everything except the dwarves themselves when used. Thanks for letting me know. Now, onto the Q&A. The editing on this video will be pretty lightweight, so feel free to put this on in the background. Okay, so the good news is that my microphone at least got picked up, so I know which questions I asked. So at least that much.
Cool.
You can really tell it's my first time doing an interview type thing when I don't record the first 20 minutes.
Well, at least you managed to record the
rest
following.
of it.
Yeah. Cool. But then you can just ask the questions as you want.
So the first question is the most asked one that even I'm sick of, but people keep asking it. You'll probably already know what it's going to be. Why is Roguecore a standalone game?
Right. So the whole thing that it started as a initially kind of like a game mode inside Deeper Galactic, and then kind of as we tried that, this was kind of just using the classes, just another way to play DRG. It just felt like a weird deep dive, and it wasn't really kind of like bringing enough, like even though it we would kind of play around with like, oh, you get to like get some more power on the way and stuff like that. It wasn't really living up to it, what we would want from something like this. So then we kind of went this other step to try to make it into kind of an expansion, which for us would mean a DLC, I guess, in this sense. And that worked out much better because kind of it allowed us to disconnect a bit from the dwarves, although like we still had to somehow ground it within the progression and like all the systems within DRG that an expansion of DRG would kind of like connect to. It did, however, bring like the question of like, does it make sense for us to do a a paid DLC that brings new gameplay, because that's something that we haven't done up until this point, and it's not really something that we were ever planning to do for DRG. And kind of and because we had this like success with disconnecting a bit from kind of the DRG requirements by doing it as a DLC. So then kind of we took that step further, and Mikkel, the game director, kind of okayed for us to do a prototype where it's like completely, we don't have to even consider Deeper Galactic outside of like theme, right? So it's like we still would like it to take place on Hoxus and stuff like that, but gameplay wise, anything was up for grabs. And kind of when we did that, that's where it felt even better. It kind of really showed itself to be a promising like a fun thing to play that did actually play a bit different from Deeper Galactic, even though they shared this same core. And it's at that point that kind of like we took that prototype a bit further, played around with it, and then it became very clear that's like no, this is totally something that can be its own game, and it's actually like it is a better experience if we develop it as its own game than if we just because then we don't have these constraints of trying to connect it into Deeper Galactic systems. We don't kind of have to make it work within the progression systems in DRG, whether you're getting like a XP, like what character are you playing with, because the thing is like being able to say like there's no character, like it's not we're not doing classes, we're doing something completely different. and also again we had kind of like more freedom of what we would do with the weapons. We wanted to have the DRG weapons in there as kind of like part of the story. Like you would find, the GK2, you would find a flamethrower, like the crisper and stuff like that. But kind of when it was a part of DRG, it would kind of make sense for those weapons to more or less be the same. It would be weird that a Subata in one like in the main game would feel drastically different than the Subata in this like expansion that you would buy. And then the other thing was that like with the idea of doing it as an expansion, it was kind of like then we were making a roguelike mode for DRG players, right? So you have the game, and now you are a kind of can have this game mode if you want to. And as we kind of worked on it further, we saw that like it's something that could actually stand on its own 2 feet, if you will, and instead could just be a roguelite game in the DRG universe, in the DRG setting. That is for anybody who actually likes these kind of games. You don't have to be a DRG fan to enjoy this.
Mm.
And we kind of like once we like kind of got to the point where we're like, yeah, we believe in this, then it kind of made sense to just take that step, disconnect it, give ourselves that freedom, and yeah, go with it. So that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. Okay, so what inspired you to make a roguelite themed DRG?
Right. So that part goes back a long time. Not like not like roguecore, but the idea of doing a roguelike kind of game flow. That was one of the things that was kind of on the table when we were designing deep dives, actually. So when we were doing kind of the end game update for DRG, when kind of we came to this point where uh, the game we made, where we originally were like, oh, it'd be great if people played it for like 20 hours. And then kind of in this process in early access, right, players are playing it way more, and they like it. So like the whole end game thing was us trying to like support the kind of play people were doing, add systems that could work with that. And so the deep dives, right, that was kind of part of it. And one of the things that was totally on the kind of being considered was like, well, should deep dives be kind of like a roguelike-ish thing, um, where you get some power progression during the dive kind of thing. And we ended up going against that, and choosing instead to focus on the permanent progression that kind of are the systems running in DRG. So over, as you know them now, right, overclocks and cosmetics, and kind of like just having be deep dives a way to get this like other content, and not so much focusing on like power progression within the dive. But it's something that we always felt would make sense, or like could make sense in the way DRG plays, like because we have the procedural caves, so we are able to offer a fresh um, you could say like setting a fresh level, right? That part is pretty good, and we can of course leverage that more as we're going to try to do with Rocore, like with the whole like having some structures and stuff like that in there as well. But so we had that, so kind of it was something that we talked about a couple of times, about like, oh, should we maybe try to do a DRG kind of roguelike. I mean, also like this whole thing of like endless modes. I mean, and these are also things that are popping up in the community, right? Where people talk about, oh, like how about making an endless mode, or how about like I don't remember if anybody actually ever said a roguelike. Kind of feel like I have seen somebody
Maybe,
talking
yeah.
talking about it.
It sounds
Um,
plausible.
but it's anyway, like these kind of things, like it's something that we've shared here as well. And I actually like made a small uh, like presentation, just kind of like like maybe like a year ago or something like that, a little less. Um, I just wanted to get some thoughts down. I started thinking about this again, and I put down the thoughts. And at that point, I kind of imagined it as an expansion. Although, again, what an expansion for DRG would be I didn't know, but it was just kind of like, okay, so like I wanted to take place in DRG, and it was just like a little bit of like what this kind of like roguelike ish thing could be. And then some months later, I was just talking with Mikkel, and we were talking about. I don't remember the exact thing, but anyway, he kind of like mentioned like, oh, like maybe we should try to make a roguelike expansion or something like that. Um, or kind of like play with the roguelike mechanics. And I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about the exact same thing. And that kind of like what kicked it off.
Hmm. All right. Will there be new traversal tools?
Yeah, so there's in Rocore there's definitely space for that, and I really would like to explore that. So I'm not gonna say yes, and I'm not gonna say how many, but unlike in DRG where there's certain constraint in terms of like if we were to give a new traversal tool to a new class, it would need to kind of be a viable choice compared to the other traversal tool, and it needs to like be a viable addition to like the group.
It
Um,
also needs to like do exactly what people would expect for that class to do.
exactly. I mean, and we've kind of like there's also been people talking about like overclocks and stuff like that for tools, and I've been generally saying no to that because it's actually not as much the guns as it is the tools that make up the class identity reliably. I mean, of course, the guns we're trying to keep them in there, but they have some wiggle room. Um, but we're trying to make the classes feels strong. And I mean, and that makes it a very big kind of a very, very tough task to like think of like, oh, new tools for every class that would still work in a similar enough way to the old tools, but be worth it. But with Rocore, we don't have that constraint requirement. We don't have classes. Again, because you're not like selecting your loadout and then starting a kind of a mission, right? You're finding this stuff. So it's okay if some tools are better than others or are drastically different. Again, so we can do variations on the personal mobility that a grappling hook does without any issues, and we don't have to go in kind of the sets of four thing, right? Because like you could argue the scout's mobility tool is the easiest one to kind of like make alternatives for, because you don't even have to consider the rest of the team in that sense.
Yeah, in a
But in
similar
DRG, we
sense.
couldn't do that, right? We couldn't be like, oh yeah, we made three new traversal tools for Scout,
Yeah, you can't.
and nothing for anybody else,
Oh,
right?
we made three more sentry guns for engineer.
Exactly, right. So traversal tools, and actually that with you mentioning sentry guns, also like deployables and other items is something that I really want us to explore. Um, uh, in Rocore, and like my colleague Tim right now, he's very much focusing on kind of the in run progression and the upgrades and the guns, and so this kind of stuff is super important, and I think it's going to be really fun for us to be able to play around with different mechanics here. And just kind of as an example, like it could, like the one you gave of a different turret. I mean, again, right, there is no engineer anymore in that sense, but the reclaimers find DRG gear down there, so they can totally find an engineer turret, and then you can kind of like take it and then put it into one of your slots. We're kind of working with this like item slots and consider guns as items as well, right? Everything's an item.
Mm.
Um, so you have a limited number of slots. We actually went from 4, which was like the DRG standard. We went down to 3, so that you kind of have to choose, start making choices earlier. So you can't have just keep taking everything you find. And yeah, so you have your guns, and then you have these deployables or usable items, like for example a gun or shield or a turret, and we can have different kinds of shield, different kind of turrets. And we're not in DRG, we're not part of DRG, we're not an expansion, so it's okay that we have all these weird things. That's like, if this was part of DRG, actually it would be like, well, how come the engineer's not getting this new turret that you guys made? I mean, it's a cool turret, right? We would like so this gives us freedom to kind of mess around with it without also having to
Yeah,
create
absolutely.
these upgrade paths for these items, right? They don't need that. Like this DRG build thing. Like when that was one of the things. Like it was a price we accepted when we decided to go um, uh, deeper with the weapons instead of like having more weapons in DRG and items and all that stuff. Like that was I don't know if you remember like the old upgrade, the old kind of like weapon and item upgrade system we had.
Yeah, it was very
Uh,
linear.
it was very much inspired by Doom 2016.
Oh?
Uh, yeah, 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 yeah. It was a bit before my time, but like, I mean, if you look at it like lightly, but it's kind of this thing, right? You have a few, if you have a few choices, and the main choice you have is like which one do you unlock first, right? In the end, you kind of get almost everything anyway. And then kind of there was a choice between like, okay, well, do we make more guns, a lot more guns, and kind of go into this looter shooter-ish territory, or do we want to instead kind of explore each gun further? And we decided to go that way, to add more depth and more builds and kind of play around instead of having a bunch of different miniguns, right? That you can find. We're like, no, we'll have one minigun and then you get to make it yours. But we're not doing that in Rocore, right? So that's kind of in Rocore we're going the opposite. So we are going in this like, yeah, like we can have all these different items, and we don't have to like making a new item is not this gargantuan task that it is in DRG. Um,
All right.
yeah, that was a
Um,
long answer.
it's fine. It's fine. Will most enemies return? If so, which ones won't make a comeback?
um, yes, most enemies will return at the moment. All DRG enemies are in Rocore. I don't. I mean, yeah, I don't think we have yet pulled anything out. And the idea is right. It's like, I mean, it's still on Hoxus, so we are adding new enemies that are kind of like rogue core specific. Um, but and that's kind of like, kind of be its own family, and we're still figuring out like what they
Also, a
look
new
like.
species.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not going to be glyph. It's going to be something else.
Ooh, okay.
But exactly what it is, we don't know.
That's for update
So
4 to figure
hmm?
out. That's for update 4 to figure out.
Exactly, and we're currently in the process, and once kind of I'm done with the right now, there's a lot of focus on the November maintenance update. So I'm actually working on that right now. But once that is done, we're kind of one of the things that we're going to focus on is prototyping some of these enemies, and then from that trying to also figure out like what they would look like. So it's a little bit this kind of um, we're letting gameplay dictate a bit what they're gonna look like. We actually like because we literally like we don't really have like a properly selected concept. There's a few concepts kind of like that Jacek, the um, kind of the guy taking care of the art. He's like the art director on Rocore, effectively the lead or lead artist, but he's also like taking a lot of decisions on Rocore there. So he's poking around at these what do you call them? Uh,
Concepts.
at these concepts, yeah, but it's also been kind of hard because like from the design side, we haven't been able to give like a super concrete like this is what we want it to be. I mean, I think like me and Mikkel have been sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing. Like I think we know we don't want them to be like the dwarves didn't like dig down into hell, right? So we don't want to do that. Um, but exactly like what exactly what is down there, like that's still very open. Um, and we're exploring it like we right now we're going to be approaching it from a mechanical direction. So we're going to make some prototypes, trying to get enemies that play a little bit different, that can add a little something, um, and that are also more difficult. I mean, like one of the things that's kind of important with rogue core is to for us to be able to actually like present a challenge and kill the team, because DRG the DRG mechanics, and we have that in Rocore as well, like with the whole revives and all that stuff. If you're good, you can like a good team can make it through a lot. come close, have a lot of close calls, but kind of pick yourselves back up. And that's really like I find that really fun in DRG. I don't really want to take that away, but we do need to kind of also like it's one of our design challenges is like how can we make it that if you haven't built well or something like that, that we can actually kill the team. We can present a challenge that is requires you like fully interacting with the rest of the systems to overcome. Yeah, that was a big tangent about new enemies and all that stuff. But going back to DRG enemies, so yeah, they are in. You're on Hoxes, so glyphids and all that stuff are there. They're a bit kind of we're looking at them being changed. So just like kind of they're in this place with the expenite, and the expenite has some sort of effect on them. So we have
Mm,
actually the enemies drop expenite when you kill them, so they're kind of like infused with it a bit. And this is mostly like, I mean, on a mechanic standpoint, right? This is just for us to be able to reward kills with expenite
yeah.
because we're not doing like an abstract XP progression. We're kind of focusing on instead that you're collecting expenite and you're using expenite to actually create these power ups using the processing drone. So we need to find ways to physically give physical chunks of expenite to the player. But some enemies like, and the first one on the list right now is kind of the cave leech, which is a little problematic, mostly not in multiplayer, but in the single player part of it. And single player is important for us as well, even though this is multiplayer first, co-op first. Um, Single player is still super important, and whether or not we're going to have a Bosco is like very much up in the air. Personally, like, or at least a while back, I really kind of wanted the single player experience of Rotor to be a bit more lonely than in DRG. So kind of that it really was just you down there to have this kind of you against the core
Mm,
feeling. But now, kind of as we shifted to, you have this expenite processing drone, so you're not completely alone anymore in solo. So there could be space for a helper drone that could, rescue you from the clutches of the cave leech. Um, but yeah, because right now in single player there is no Bosco. So when you play single player, if cave leech gets you, that's game over. Um,
hmm
there is no uh, oh, I forgot the name of that perk.
There's,
Uh,
I also forget.
but yeah,
Heightened senses.
the heightened sense, yes, yes. There is no heightened sense. There's no perks in that same sense. We have like the whole soup mods thing with progression, but we're not. I'm not really ready to even talk about it because we haven't even finished designing the like
Okay.
initial version of that. So, but the perks, right? I mean, again, this is not DRG, right? So the perks aren't there.
Yeah.
And either we need to either give the reclaimers a way to deal with these kind of threats without requiring Bosco. So, or we redesign the enemy so that it kind of is not an instant kill, no matter your health, right? So it could be that so we need to figure some stuff out there. So that's an example of an enemy that might not make it, or at least be modified heavily. But for the rest, I mean, it's again, it's we take it one step at a time. If an enemy doesn't make sense or somehow conflicts with some mechanics, then of course it will go or be modified. And like I think how
Sure.
far we modify an enemy, that's going to depend. So maybe it makes more sense for us to like make a new enemy that kind of does the same thing, but just to kind of make it clear that this is not exactly the same thing. Um, uh, but yeah, we'll see.
Will there be an endless mode put into the game at some point?
That I think that's definitely a maybe. It's something that we've been talking about internally here as well already, where some people would definitely like to see um, an endless mode in Rocore. And Rocore, like I mean, it is of course right in many ways. Like should work pretty well with this. We're probably not gonna like if we were to do an endless mode, we probably wouldn't do looping like in Risk of Rain 2. Um, I think it's like looping in general. It's a little bit yeah
It'll probably
off.
be like its own little game mode, like a deep dive or something.
Probably because I mean we are like the whole idea of right with Roku is that you are kind of you're going into these dig sites, right? You're going down through however many stages the different sites have, right? Like sites dig sites you open up later on are gonna be longer and stuff like that. But like the idea is that there is a finish, right? You're getting this done, you're coming back, and then you can play a different run, try to reclaim a different dig site. So kind of an endless mode in this case, like it thematically doesn't make sense, but gameplay wise, like could totally make sense, right? So yeah, it might be some kind, like we might need to find a way to dress it up. But there's definitely people at Ghoship Games that would want to see that happen, and I know the like also players are interested. It's more a question of like how we set it up, but it's not our priority right now, of course. So it's something we're going to come back to.
All right. Is there going to be new music?
Yes. What it is, we don't know. So I've kind of I poked Mikkel and I'm like, so new music for Oker, and he's totally into it. But he hasn't, as far as I'm aware, gotten around to actually like properly start thinking about it. Um, so yeah, so there will be new music, but don't ask me what it's going to be, and that's not really my area of expertise.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, there is a new sound designer. I know that.
Yes.
What is the most fun part about working on Rocore so far?
Um, I think it's this kind of anything goes, and of course it's within the bounds of like the game concept or whatever, but still, there's a lot more freedom, and that's for me very exhilarating and exciting, and because as much as I actually love working on DRG, and every season is also an interesting like challenge of trying to like figure out okay what kind of mechanics can we bring in this time and um, like what kind of play will that make? With Rokor, it's kind of it's much more free, right? So you kind of really get to like even though we're building it on on the foundation of DRG, right? I know some people have been asking like, oh, like how much of DRG is in there, and again, like we're literally building this on top of DRG, stripping out anything that's not necessary, but a lot is there. So, for example, we'll modify the player controller if at some point we feel we need to, but we don't need like we're not making a new one just for the hell of it, right? But yeah, it's the fact that yeah can make new guns, all that stuff with far fewer constraints and considerations than all that has to happen in DRG.
Will there be secrets and more stages added? I guess I kind of answered the second part earlier, but will there be like secret caves, like in most roguelike games?
Um, I I don't see why not. So I mean, the exact flow we're playing around with that right now. So this whole thing of having multiple exits and stuff like that is something that we're playing around with. So it's not just like a linear. Like I've seen a lot of people on Reddit keep talking about like this whole thing of like 5 stages of roughly 5 minutes each. That was the first prototype. That's not what Rocore is going to be. It's not just going to be 5 stages of 5 minutes each.
Okay.
Um, so it can definitely be more than 5 stages, and we've now been playing around with extending stage time, coming close to like 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes, and stuff like that. So we're playing around with that. We're playing around with or like already have like this thing where you get to choose to go in different kind of directions, if you will, including biome changes and stuff like that. So we have this like mid station right now, although it's kind of like a weird name. Can totally have more than one of them per run. But these places where kind of you get to regroup or recoup or resupply, heal, stuff like that in a more calm environment where like also a good place for everyone to like go take a bathroom break or whatever. Um, and like maybe like upgrade to your weapons and things like that. and in there, kind of like when you're leaving that, like you actually have multiple choices that they will all eventually lead right to kind of the final stage. But we're definitely playing around with that, and adding secret elements or like locked elements is definitely something that I want to explore. So you can maybe find a key that will unlock this like elevator that will take you to a new place and stuff like that.
Ooh, that sounds
Yeah.
like a cool idea.
Yeah, and it's for us, it's this kind of stuff is a balance between, because again, right, we want to do multiple runs. Like we don't want to do this whole thing of there is the run.
Hmm.
Both me and Mikkel are very big fans of actually getting to complete things, and having these moments of like, okay, well, yeah, like you did that, cool, it's done, you beat it. And that's a little counter to, like, of course, how a lot of the roguelikes and roguelites that I've played, where it's like, there's the run, you got to beat the run, and of course it's beatable, but that's like, a big thing. It takes a long time, and I would like there to be like a few more of these like points of like where it's like, yeah, you did it, I did it, yay. The complexity of the run versus just having more runs, gonna need to find a balance there, and exactly how varied the run is. I mean, of course, it's going to be, we want need it to be varied and to play, like, so it's interesting to go again and stuff like that. But still, right, there's also the whole thing of like uh, the unlocking like the next run, the kind of the next lost site that you can then try to get, and that's also one of the ways we're looking at having difficulty progression, because it's something we're thinking a lot about in terms of the game getting more difficult versus you getting more powerful, and kind of how we can have some control over that. So it's not. I really hate it when games feel like you can't beat it unless you grind it for a long time
Hmm.
and unlock. And it is part of the roguelite kind of thing, but still, I think different games do it to different extents and have a different feel to it. And I really want us to strike a good balance there.
Hmm. All right. How will Rogue Core stop players from fighting amongst each other for upgrades?
Um, yeah. So hopefully players are coming in with a mindset that they're a team in the first place. But we are, of course. So the whole thing of the negotiation screen, which there is a screenshot of on the Steam page. That's kind of like our main way of dealing out the loot, if you will. The upgrades, whether it's coming from the processor drone that has been fed enough expenite that it can create new power-ups, or from a weapon crate that kind of has been opened, or cache, or whatever. We're not sure visually how it looks yet, but that kind of negotiation screen, and the idea there is that like the players take turns, and you can, like, of course, it's nice when you can talk, whether on Discord or whatever, but we're also very much looking into putting in systems and tools for the players to be able to communicate with each other without using voice
Like the
or chat.
little hearts, right?
Like the little hearts, exactly. We also have it that like you see other people's cursors on there, and things like that. So you also don't like it gives a nice sense of the team being there together. And then of course it's also like, so there's this kind of like this hard like sharing um enforcement where we're saying, okay, so now it's player one's turn, and then it'll go player 1, 2, 3, 4, right, and then next time it will be, you know 2, 3, 4, 1, or like I don't think it needs to constantly always be there. So, but the idea is that everybody will get a turn getting first choice. um, uh, I think actually right now we have it that the person who had the last choice anyway, whatever. So there is that. Um, so everybody kind of gets a turn at getting the first pick, and because this is happening within the context of many of these negotiations, right? Not just one, not just two, but many throughout the run. There is a little bit of like also, I guess, social pressure to kind of work together. We feel it also in the office, like when we play, where it's like, um, of course, right? If you are accommodating to others, they're more likely to be accommodating to you as well. So kind of like, yes, it's like very often when people have their first turn, they still like ask, hey, like what do people want? Also, I mean, we're trying to make it that more than one choice is like relevant and interesting. And sometimes it goes the other way where it's like, okay, obviously this choice is really good for this person. And again, because you are succeeding and failing as a team, and it's kind of very important that all of you can kind of stay alive or stay up. A teammate going down is a big deal. Like one of the things that actually is kind of like a challenge on the design side that I'm looking into working with is this whole thing that very experienced players can stay alive in DRG really well as a team.
Yeah.
Um, and like we need to be able to also like wipe the team. So kind of the DRG kind of model, if you will, that we've created is like if you experience, you can recover from a lot. The team can recover from really a lot, and so we of course are looking at ways to kind of counter that without destroying it. And this is kind of like again trying to make this a bit harder. I mean, if you kind of like just consider right, like failure rates in DRG, I think. Um, with hazard 4, you're looking at something like I think 25-30% failure. So I mean DRG, like when you are playing at kind of like your level, it's like um your chance of success is pretty high. And I think we want it a bit harder with Rogue Core. So looking at it there.
Is
So you want the whole team to be strong. Kind of is my
oh,
point, is that so that
okay.
even though players may want this one shiny thing, it's like yeah, you want that shiny thing. And again, most of these things are also like they're kind of based on weapon tags. Like we have this whole weapon tag system to specifically kind of work with this, so that just because that thing is purple doesn't mean you should have it, or doesn't even mean you want it. And if you take it, well, now you have this thing that you need to like build the rest of yourself around. And if you're halfway through the run, right, that's a big commitment and a lot of stuff that you're kind of throwing out the window. So but time will tell, and of course, it's very important to get actual players besides us devs in on this and start getting an idea of how it feels for them.
Yeah, developers and like friend groups are one thing, but playing with randoms, who knows what
One
might
hundred
happen.
percent, 100%. But again, like these kind of friction points are also important. So if there is no friction, kind of, I really believe then the co-op is also less cooperative, if you will. You need to actively choose uh, to like work together. I think if you are like just doing stuff and all you can do is purely 100% cooperative and you can't make a wrong step, then you're not really even uh, doing it. Almost might as well be NPCs at that point. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a balance though, right? It is a balance. And we tried very much to hit that in DRG, and and we're gonna do the same in Rogue Core, right? Where we're trying to find a balance, like so that you consider your teammates a lot. And I think right now, actually in Rogue Core, because of the negotiation aspect of it, like the whole team selection of upgrades, you consider your teammates much more, and you actually start considering what builds they're building as well, because as you're going through this process. Like, I mean, of course there'll be disputes. That's also okay, as long as they are not too extreme and not too important. And the thing is also, because of how many negotiations happen, no one negotiation is like super critical.
Any change to gunplay or movement mechanics? Is it identical to DRG?
So it's starting from an identical point, but it's already starting to stray, if you will. We're playing around with actually kind of being able to affect weapon handling throughout the run. So kind of so we have kind of like different kind of upgrades, and this is still super early, by the way. So just like still stuff we're just completely experimenting with. But this idea that you can make your gun like more stable. You can counter recoil with some of the choices you're making, or you can improve accuracy and stuff like that. And that does kind of bring the question of like where should these guns be normally, and we're playing around with that. We're also, because we kind of have these aspects that can affect everything, we're also experimenting with adding like in DRG, most projectile weapons don't have dynamic spread.
Hmm.
In fact, I think no projectile weapon has dynamic spread. And when I say projectile, I mean ones that aren't hit scan, ones that actually like shoot a projectile that travels. And we're actually like, right now experimenting with adding that to all of these kind of weapons, so that kind of spread and what it means like that will exist and be relevant to more weapons.
How will ammo
Yeah.
scarcity be handled in Rocore?
Um. So no nitra. The idea
Yeah.
is that you find ammo. So right now we have this whole thing. We're playing around so again kind of the whole negotiation screen. Just very quickly coming back to that. So you have like the whatever number of choices depending on the number of players and stuff like that. And then you always also have the choice to like skip, to not choose one of these upgrades, and that right now instead just gives you permanent health. So health is not one of the kind of potential power ups that is always available. And it's kind of like we're trying to balance that into a place where it's like it's never a bad thing to take that. So even if you don't get, maybe somebody else is going to get the thing that you may have wanted, or maybe everything you're seeing is kind of like, man, that's like this is not really built into my build. You can always give yourself some more health instead. And we're looking in kind of like when you're doing weapon selection, perhaps exploring with that option being a resupply instead. So kind of like, yeah, you can get new weapons, or you can also like just maintain your existing ones, give them ammo. However, right now, for like the past week and a half, we've been having bugs where like ammo is you're just getting all your ammo back every stage.
Oh,
So
that sounds familiar.
until we fix that, it's on hold. Um,
That sounds
but
familiar.
yes, so once we can figure that out, hopefully we can also pass that on to DRG as soon as possible.
Will expenite be the only thing we mine, or will there be veins of gold and such?
So right now there's actually two. There's expenite and something we're calling yopenite,
Oh,
after Johan.
oh,
Johan's handle on Steam right now is Joppe, which apparently is a well-loved Swedish children's TV character or whatever. But anyway,
oh. Okay.
and that's kind of like we're playing around with the idea of the shop, and this is shop in big quotation marks. But this thing of having a way for the players to get some more control over the RNG, but that is like still exactly how that's going to work, and that is still very 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 early. We're just experimenting and poking at this stuff. It's way rougher state than kind of like the rest of the game right now. But gold and stuff like that, like maybe I think we'll have to come back to this in a little while. Right now, there's no need for it, and we at least don't have any kind of mechanics planned around that. If you're thinking about like the gold frenzy thing, or
Okay.
yeah, red sugar's in there. There you go.
Yeah, we saw red sugar.
Yeah. But and again, right now the approach is kind of like you're not there to mine, you're there to do something else. So even though they're dwarves and they come with pickaxes and digging still totally their thing, um, we're really focusing on kind of them being there to get a job done. Um, but we'll see.
You mentioned the gold frenzy thing, but
Yeah.
the small buffs listed in the roadmap kind of sound like that's what it kind of is.
Yeah, and it is, but they're kind of disconnected from you like collecting anything. in
Oh,
that same sense. No, it's something you're finding. Like right now, we have like these little upgrade stations that where you can get kind of a small personal buff, and there's no negotiation involved in those.
okay.
So because there's like one of the things like as we've been prototyping and playing around with stuff, there's a limit to how many times we can pop that screen up and pause the game, and we need to find a good balance there, and we've already like totally hit the limit. So we've been pulling back from that, but then we are like, well, we also want more upgrades, we also want like a bit more growth, and that's kind of like where these smaller, we're calling them personal upgrades, come in, and we're playing around with different systems of how we might do that.
Will Rogue Core explore a possible story for DRG?
mm, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Like any sort of like lore or
I mean, it brings in lore, right, by
yeah.
existing. If the question is, are we going to do like lore or narrative in a way that's different from the way we've been doing it with DRG, the answer is no. I think we're going to stick to that, stick to doing it how we've been doing it with DRG, where we, kind of add stuff, a few tidbits here and there, but at the same time, also leave a lot of space for kind of the players to themselves also kind of create headcanon, and it's really fun.
How many new weapons are there?
So right now, I think we actually have 7, but we've cut it down to 4 that we're focusing on. Um, and these new weapons they're all initially were coming in as reclaimer weapons. So like the things that you're starting with, though in most cases, most of the time we tend to keep them till the end as well, because they do their own thing. So right now we selected 4 that we think kind of like have a nice range of play styles, and kind of the way they can also synergize with the existing weapons that you find in the caves. But I see these kind of like the reclaimer weapons being kind of a prime candidate for like us exploring and messing around with like new gun designs later in the process, in updates and stuff like that, because it's like, again, I think I also said this before, not with you, but like we're trying to really focus on making the guns easier to like make in Rogue, in terms of like the sheer amount of work required to get a gun to like the same state as the existing weapons, whereas in DRG it's very prohibitive.
Yeah,
You
like
just
you. I think you mentioned in Rogue Core there's no like modifications or overclocks
No, not in the same sense.
in the same sense.
Yeah, so what I mean is like the kind of the reclaimer weapons that you have right as of right now, they don't have any modifications, um, or overclocks or anything like that. So these are your reclaimer guns, the ones that Frelic has been concepting and is actually now making some 3D models. So those are kind of like the idea there is that you would unlock more of them, and kind of they change up the kind of the starting loadout you're making. Then the guns that you find down at the dig site, that's kind of like where all the like existing DRG weapons are going, right? So it's kind of
Okay.
DRG dig site, right? So they have like crates of equipment and weapons and stuff like that, and that's where you can find and kind of pilfer and use to your advantage. And in those weapons, we're looking at like how we can get variety out of those weapons. So we're definitely playing around with them, kind of like having some like attributes that can be added. Some of them kind of like basic, like you find a GK2 that has like a larger magazine, something like that, or like a very fast rate of fire and things like that. But I think there's totally also space there for overclock style stuff. And again, like I think as many of these that make sense from DRG, I think we should totally bring in. But many of the overclocks from DRG also, I think, wouldn't necessarily make sense in this context. At least not all of them. And in the same way, we can also make new ones. And again, there is like a certain freedom here, because we don't like, it's not like in DRG where it's like, okay, you get the overclocks for your gun, and then you get to choose which overclock makes sense for you and which build you're going to make and stuff like that. So there's a lot more to consider in terms of balancing and all that stuff. Whereas with rogue core, it's like, well, we just mostly focus on making something that's fun, and the balance is more rough because it's like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe the other one is stronger, but I mean, the other one's not here. And it's a different thing, and again, they don't need to be all of equal like strength and value and things like that, because you're not coming from this kind of like, I have all the pieces and now I make my build, right? It's like you are making your build also out of kind of like what you roll, what you get.
Yeah.
I think we have time for a few more before I need to run.
Okay. Is it possible we could actually see melee weapons this time around?
Don't hold your breath, but I would like to explore a little bit, but in the context of a shooter, if that makes sense. Like not really as the primary way to engage, like not something that would really replace all your guns. But I think like now would be the time for us to poke around here again. But yeah, we'll see. It is something that's on my wish list.
All right. I guess we could, because since since you don't have much time left, we could like rapid fire some like filler questions.
As you wish.
I call them filler questions because you'll see.
Okay. Oh no.
The first one is: will there be cubes?
No comment.
No comment. Will Carl be present in Rogue Core as an unknown character as well?
I mean, I think Carl. Yeah, we need to figure out exactly where that goes, but yeah, probably.
All right. Will there be Dystrom? Oh. Of course, somebody.
Probably not.
Will there be elephants in the game or similar creatures?
Elephants?
Yeah.
Why? How? Very, very unlikely. I'm not going to say no just in case we end up putting an elephant in there for some stupid reason, but very unlikely. I mean,
female dwarves?
That's been asked many times also now already on the what do you call it, on the stream, and
Yeah.
it's something that has been brought up when we started the whole Rocore thing. Like internally, it was like, so female dwarfs, and again, there's many camps in the office regarding on how we would do that, if we should do it. We need consensus, and it has been hard to reach. So don't hold your breath.
Will the friendly robots or Steve be making an appearance?
Steve, maybe not. I mean, friendly robots.
Yeah, like Mule, Bosco.
Yeah, so
Lloyd.
I mean, they can exist. I think Lloyd is like the bartender in the space rig, and while we are trying to figure out exactly how we get booze into the dwarves on the ramrod, it's almost certainly not going to be another Lloyd. We want to do something else. But yeah, again with Bosco, I mean, I don't think we would have Bosco. Maybe you might find a Bosco in the cave. I could totally see that could be something cool. But yeah, we have to see. No specific plans to do this.
Will loot bugs make a return?
Right now they're not, but they could. I mean, then it would be like loot bugs that have been eating expenite.
Oh yeah.
We are actually playing around with the kind of like because like as we're kind of exploring what expenite is internally, because it's not like we have it all figured out, right? We are currently in the process of figuring it out. So we kind of have it permeate the bodies of the bugs that are in these dig sites. Expenite is very much connected to kind of like the stuff that happened here, and so kind of like the bugs that you're fighting, they drop expenite, and kind of so I mean, we totally could have loot bugs in there. We don't have them right now. I mean, maybe. I don't see why not, but I'm not promising loot bugs.
Will we see more weaponized mules?
Maybe. Again, I like not one that you're bringing yourself. But as something that kind of in the Betsy vein, I could see that being a thing, uh, a reasonable risk reward moment.
Will we discover what is laying all these eggs?
No, not in Rocore. You would not discover that.
Will Beastmaster make a return?
I guess that's connected to Steve, and right now, no plans for that. Like to me, it kind of in my head makes more sense for DRG than for Rocore. But yeah, I'm not gonna say no. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Unlikely, I think. At least at this moment, unlikely. But maybe.
Can we eat expenite?
So do you mean can or do you mean should?
Can.
Can. I guess technically you could eat anything.
Yeah. Are Omeron Hearthstone cores related to Rocore?
um, we don't know yet.
Oh,
Again, we're in the process of figuring stuff out ourselves, right? This
yeah.
is again to kind of hammer home how early in the process this is. It's literally it's just because we were like, yeah, this gameplay makes sense. We're ready to commit to make something out of this. Everything else to be decided as we go.
Will there be barrels to bounce on in the caves?
I guess there could be.
Oh,
We
yeah.
actually haven't thought about it, but now it actually could totally make sense.
There could be,
Um,
yeah, because there's structures.
yeah, totally, exactly. Because the idea is like these dig sites, and again, this is we're still figuring it out, but we like this idea that the like the getting of exponent is a little more like harvesting or like a bit more of a uh, like requires a bigger operation than like getting Morkite. So in Morkite, it's like a smash and grab. Send the dwarves. They go into a cave, grab all the Morkite, run away. Whereas with Exponite, they've had to set up these more permanent or at least semi-permanent uh, dig sites. So yeah, there's totally space for barrels. Yay physics.
Will there be silly, goofy hats in Rocore for us to wear?
We are still figuring that out. Exactly how we would do cosmetics in Rockcore is still something we need to figure out. I think things like
Mm.
hats, beards, hair makes sense. We think maybe armor suits would be kind of reserved for the face suit and kind of the power that it has as a way to communicate to other players what it is that you're bringing. Though we have to see. And I mean, yeah, exactly how silly we want to take these things, we'll have to see. I mean, on the one hand, we want to go into this slightly darker zone, theme wise, but it's still a co-op game, and you'll still say silly things and be silly with each other. So in that sense, a silly hat is not completely like a big issue. We have to figure that out. I think yeah, we haven't really talked about it internally.
All right. Can
Okay,
we
last one,
please?
last one.
Oh, last one.
Yeah, okay,
Have you?
last two.
Can we please
Are you
eat the
gonna actually
Chinese
vote?
food?
What? No, don't. Have you seen it since season 3?
It's still there. Have you heard
It's
of
it's
cave
got rock bugs
crawlers?
in it.
It does. Oh yeah, one of them does.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you heard of cave crawlers?
Sorry, what?
Cave crawlers.
Like the brand, like the
It's a video game on
no, the
Steam.
video game cave crawlers.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like one of the subgroups in the minor unions.
Oh no,
Uh,
no.
I've heard of those. Okay, cave crawlers. Hold on, maybe I have. Uh,
There's some
crawl,
DRG references in there.
I'm googling it. I'm googling it.
Like
Cave
you
crawlers
can,
are on Steam.
like you can
Let's
just
go.
you can kick like random props at the beginning and press V
As you should. No,
to
that's cool.
salute.
That's cool. Um, I think I saw this like pop up like on our internal Slack. Somebody was like, "Hey, look, this thing. It looks
Oh,
cool." Um,
I think that's it, right?
Okay, no, but I do need to run, man.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you can
thanks
go. You can
for
go.
yeah. See you, man. Bye.
See ya. That wraps up the Q&A. Just to make a point, I had written down nearly 100 questions, with the repeat questions and ones that can be answered by simply checking the store page decluded. There were a total of 4 questions I straight up deleted from the list. These questions were either way too loaded or something really stupid like the sex update joke for the millionth time. As for how the Q&A went, well, as you heard, for the first session I didn't record the first 20 minutes. Later, I figured out it was because OBS stopped capturing desktop audio because I switched to my wireless headset. No idea why that would matter. Luckily, the dev was very open to doing a second session and re-answered the questions that weren't recorded. I was overall hoping to give more questions than I ended up asking, but the developer elaborated so much that he'd end up answering a bunch of other questions. If you checked up on the video, you probably saw the indirectly answers thing. Will I do more community Q&A stuff? I don't know. See ya.